Avery Mitchell, 34, never imagined her family's Thanksgiving dinner would end with her sister Heather publicly humiliating her in front of everyone. "Stop asking for money all the time," Heather had shouted, making everyone uncomfortable. What Heather didn't know was that I had secretly been paying off her $52,800 credit card debt for the past 3 years. The revelation that would follow would change our family forever. Hey everyone! Before I dive deeper into this family drama that completely turned my life upside down, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments below. If you enjoy real-life family revenge stories where karma comes full circle, please hit that like button and subscribe to my channel. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next in this twisted tale of family betrayal. The moment when my sister realized what I'd actually been doing with my money, absolutely priceless. Growing up as Avery Mitchell in suburban Boston meant living in the shadow of my older sister Heather. From the moment she was born, Heather was deemed the golden child of our family, beautiful, charismatic, and seemingly perfect in every way. My parents, Richard and Linda Mitchell, both successful attorneys, never tried to hide their preference. While they attended every one of Heather's dance recitals and debate tournaments with beaming pride, my achievements in science fairs and writing competitions were often met with distracted congratulations or sometimes completely forgotten. Our childhood home, a sprawling colonial in an affluent neighborhood, was adorned with Heather's trophies and photographs. My academic certificates were tucked away in a drawer in my room. "Your sister just has that special something," my mother would say whenever I questioned the disparity. "Some people are just born to shine." These casual remarks cut deeper than my parents ever realized, planting seeds of insecurity that would take decades to uproot. By high school, the pattern was firmly established. Heather dated the quarterback, became prom queen, and secured a spot at an Ivy League college with our parents' enthusiastic support. I focused on academics, finding solace in books, and a small circle of loyal friends who appreciated my quieter strengths. When I earned a full scholarship to Boston University for biochemistry, my father's response was, "That's nice, honey. Did you hear Heather's been invited to the governor's summer internship program?" Despite the constant comparisons, I genuinely loved my sister. Heather wasn't deliberately cruel. She simply accepted the adoration as her birthright. Sometimes, in rare moments of sisterly connection, she'd defend me against our parents' oversight. "Mom, Avery got straight A's this semester. Shouldn't we at least take her out for ice cream?" These occasional acknowledgments kept hope alive that underneath our unbalanced family dynamic, real affection existed. College provided blessed distance from the family hierarchy. I thrived in my biochemistry program, discovering a talent for research that eventually led to a promising career in pharmaceutical development. Meanwhile, Heather graduated with honors but struggled to find her professional footing, bouncing between glamorous-sounding jobs that never seemed to last. Still, my parents spoke of her exploration phase with admiration, as though she were discovering the cure for cancer, rather than getting fired from her third PR firm. After graduation, I secured a position at Nexus Pharmaceuticals, quickly advancing through the research division while carefully managing my finances. I lived modestly in a small but comfortable apartment, invested wisely, and built a respectable savings account. Heather conversely moved to a luxury high-rise in downtown Boston, drove a car she couldn't afford, and maintained appearances with expensive clothes and vacations documented meticulously on social media. Our adult relationship settled into a predictable pattern. Family gatherings revolved around Heather's dramatic stories and accomplishments, real or exaggerated. I'd listen quietly, offer congratulations, and deflect questions about my own life with brief answers. "Work's good. Nothing exciting to report." In truth, I was leading pioneering research on autoimmune treatments, but experience had taught me that detailed explanations would be met with glazed eyes and quick subject changes. The first hint of Heather's financial troubles came during a rare sister's lunch 3 years ago. She seemed distracted, checking her phone repeatedly with growing agitation. When I asked if everything was okay, her usual confidence cracked slightly. Just some credit card drama, nothing major. She laughed it off quickly, steering the conversation toward her latest romantic prospect. I noticed she insisted on splitting the check, unusual for someone who typically expected to be treated. Over the following weeks, subtle signs multiplied. Heather canceled plans at upscale restaurants, suggesting coffee shops instead. Her social media posts from exotic locations decreased. During one vulnerable moment after several glasses of wine at my apartment, she admitted things were a little tight right now, but quickly assured me it was temporary. The commission structure at work is changing. It'll sort itself out soon. I didn't pry, further respecting her privacy. But I worried. Despite our complicated history, she was still my sister. When our parents mentioned casually that Heather had asked them for a small loan, my concern deepened. Our parents were comfortable, but not wealthy enough to support Heather's lifestyle indefinitely. I decided to do some discreet investigating, never anticipating the staggering reality I would uncover. The discovery of Heather's true financial situation came through an unexpected channel. My college roommate Melissa now worked at Boston Federal Credit Union, the same bank Heather used. During a catch-up lunch, Melissa mentioned seeing my sister at the bank, looking distressed after being denied a consolidation loan. "I shouldn't tell you this," Melissa whispered, leaning across the table, "but she's in serious trouble. Like bankruptcy-level trouble." That evening, I called Heather under the pretense of planning our mother's birthday gift. After some small talk, I gently broached the subject. "Hey, I don't mean to overstep, but if you're having financial difficulties, I might be able to help." The line went silent for several seconds before Heather erupted in tears. Not delicate, photogenic tears, but ugly, desperate sobs that shook me to my core. Between gasping breaths, the truth spilled out. Heather had accumulated over $52,800 credit card debt spread across 7 different cards. Her perfect-looking life had been financed entirely on credit, and the minimum payments alone were consuming her entire salary. Each month, she was falling further behind, using one card to make payments on another in a dangerous spiral. Eviction notices had started appearing on her door. Her car was at risk of repossession. The carefully constructed facade of success was crumbling. "Please don't tell Mom and Dad," she begged. "They've always been so proud of me. I can't let them see me fail like this." In that moment, I saw beyond the golden child to a frightened woman who had spent her entire life trying to meet impossible expectations. The familiar sting of resentment mixed with an unexpected wave of compassion. After careful consideration, I proposed a solution. I would help her pay off the debt, but with conditions. We would meet with a financial advisor. She would cut up all but one emergency credit card. She would move to a more affordable apartment. And most importantly, this would remain our secret. No one needs to know, I assured her. "Not Mom and Dad, not your friends. We'll fix this together." What followed was a meticulous financial rescue operation. I created a spreadsheet tracking each card's balance, interest rate, and payment schedule. Using my savings and a portion of my monthly income, I began systematically paying down her highest interest debts first. It required sacrifices. I postponed buying my own home, scaled back my retirement contributions, and canceled a dream trip to Japan. But watching the numbers decrease month by month provided its own satisfaction. Heather, to her credit, initially embraced the austerity measures with determination. She moved to a modest apartment in a less fashionable neighborhood. She started bringing lunch to work instead of ordering expensive takeout. She even took a weekend bartending job to increase her income, though she told friends it was just for fun. There were setbacks, occasional shopping sprees followed by tearful confessions, moments of rebellion against the strict budget, but overall progress was steady. Our relationship deepened during this period. Weekly budget meetings evolved into genuine sister time. We cooked dinner together, reminisced about childhood, and sometimes just watched movies in comfortable silence. For the first time, I felt like we were equals, rather than the golden child and her shadow. When Heather confided that she'd always been jealous of my intelligence and self-sufficiency, I was stunned. "You made everything look so easy," she admitted. I felt like I was constantly performing, terrified of disappointing everyone. Meanwhile, in family gatherings, we maintained the familiar dynamic. Heather continued to dominate conversations with slightly toned-down stories of success. I continued to fade into the background. Our parents remained oblivious to the financial crisis and its resolution unfolding right before their eyes. On the rare occasions when money was mentioned, Heather deflected with vague assurances that everything was totally fine. After 2 years of diligent payments, we had reduced the debt by almost 60%. I was proud of our progress, and even prouder of how Heather had matured through the process. She'd secured a more stable job with better pay and benefits. She was developing healthier relationships with both money and people. The emergency fund we'd established was growing steadily. For the first time, I allowed myself to believe that the rescue mission would soon be complete. Then came the weekend that changed everything. Heather called, bubbling with excitement. "I've met someone amazing," she gushed. "His name is Jake. He's a finance executive and he's taking me to the Bahamas next weekend." My stomach dropped. This wasn't part of the plan. A luxury vacation would derail months of progress. When I expressed concern, Heather's voice turned cold. "It's just one trip, Avery. Stop being so controlling. Not everyone wants to live like a nun." The old dynamic reasserted itself with shocking speed. Suddenly, I was the killjoy sister again, the one who didn't understand how to enjoy life. Despite my misgivings, I didn't push harder. Maybe this relationship would be good for her. Maybe Jake, with his financial expertise, could be a positive influence. Maybe I was being unnecessarily cautious. I couldn't have been more wrong. Jake Westbrook entered our lives like a hurricane, charismatic, impressive, and ultimately devastating. He was everything Heather had always been attracted to: tall, conventionally handsome, with the polished charm of someone accustomed to getting his way. Their whirlwind romance quickly dominated all of Heather's conversations. Jake took her to exclusive restaurants, surprised her with designer gifts, and planned extravagant weekend getaways. Each time I cautiously raised questions about these expenses, Heather had a ready answer. "Jake pays for everything," she insisted. "He's incredibly generous." Their Bahamas trip stretched from a weekend to a full week. The Instagram posts showed a paradise of infinity pools, sunset yacht cruises, and candlelit beach dinners. When Heather returned, sunburned and glowing, she announced she was moving in with Jake after just 6 weeks of dating. "His condo in Beacon Hill is amazing," she gushed. "And it doesn't make sense to keep paying rent when I'm always at his place anyway." Warning bells rang loudly in my mind. Everything was moving too quickly. During our next budget meeting, I tried to discuss the implications of this major life change. "What happens to our debt payoff plan?" I asked. "Are you talking to Jake about your financial situation?" Heather's expression hardened. "I don't need to burden him with that right now. And anyway, living with him will save me money. It's a smart financial decision." Over the following months, Heather's participation in our payment plan became increasingly erratic. She missed budget meetings, citing work emergencies or plans with Jake. When she did attend, she was distracted and defensive. The emergency fund we'd built together began to dwindle as she withdrew money for what she called relationship necessities, a new wardrobe to fit into Jake's upscale social circle, contributions to expensive dinners with his colleagues, birthday gifts for his family members. 6 months into their relationship, Jake proposed with a massive diamond ring during a trip to Paris, another vacation documented extensively on social media. When I finally got a moment alone with Heather to congratulate her, I gently inquired about the timing. "Are you sure you're ready for this? You've only known him for half a year." Her response was dismissive. "When you know, you know. Maybe if you put yourself out there more, you'd understand." The wedding planning quickly spiraled into an exercise in excess. Heather and my mother spent weekends visiting venues that cost more than my annual salary. The dress budget alone could have paid off one of her credit cards. Each time I tried to have a private conversation about finances, Heather avoided the topic. "Jake's family is helping," she would say, or "we've got it covered," without providing details. During this period, I continued making payments on Heather's debt, now largely from my own funds, as her contributions had essentially stopped. I told myself it was temporary. Once the wedding excitement settled down, we'd get back on track. I still believed in the sister I'd grown closer to during those budget meetings, the one who had shown real growth and responsibility. The breaking point came 3 months before the wedding date. I received a call from the credit card company handling Heather's largest remaining debt. There had been a series of large unauthorized charges, luxury purchases at high-end stores in Boston's most exclusive shopping district. When confronted, Heather was initially evasive, then defensive, and finally defiant. "Jake deserves a wife who fits into his world," she snapped. "These were necessary investments in our future. You wouldn't understand because you've never dated someone at his level." "But we had an agreement," I reminded her, struggling to keep my voice calm. "And those charges wiped out months of progress." "Oh my God, stop being such a martyr," Heather exploded. "No one asked you to manage my life. This isn't about the money. It's about you being jealous that I've found happiness while you're still alone with your spreadsheets and cats." The accusation stung, especially because I didn't even have cats. I had sacrificed a social life, dating opportunities, and my own financial goals to help her. And now she was framing my assistance as some kind of pathological control issue. After she stormed out, I sat alone in my apartment, staring at the detailed spreadsheet that had tracked our 3-year journey. The remaining debt still stood at over $20,000. I had personally contributed more than $30,000 toward Heather's financial freedom money I would never see again. That night, I made a difficult decision. I would continue paying off the debt as promised. I wasn't going to abandon her despite her hurtful words, but I would create some emotional distance. I stopped initiating contact. Our weekly meetings ceased entirely. When we saw each other at wedding planning events, I maintained a polite facade but avoided any meaningful conversation. Heather seemed oblivious to the change, entirely absorbed in wedding preparations and her new life with Jake. If anything, she appeared relieved to be free from my financial nagging, as she'd once called it. Meanwhile, I continued making monthly payments, watching the debt slowly decrease with none of the previous satisfaction. As the wedding approached, family gatherings increased in frequency. Each one featured Heather and Jake at the center, accepting congratulations and showcasing their perfect partnership. My parents were enchanted by Jake, viewing him as further proof of Heather's exceptional status. "He's from such a good family," my mother would gush. "They have connections everywhere." No one seemed to notice or care that I had become practically invisible at these events. Then came the weekend before Thanksgiving, when Jake's mask slipped momentarily. We were at my parents' house for a pre-holiday dinner. Jake had consumed several scotches and was holding court with stories of his business prowess. Needing a break from the Jake show, I stepped into the kitchen to help my mother with dessert. A few minutes later, Jake entered, ostensibly looking for more ice. When my mother left to ask my father about coffee, Jake's demeanor changed instantly. "I know what you've been doing," he said in a low voice, his smile gone. "Playing the savior for Heather, keeping her on a leash with this debt thing." The hairs on my neck stood up. "Heather told you about our arrangement?" I asked carefully. His laugh was cold. "Heather tells me everything. She's not as grateful for your control freak intervention as you think. Just so we're clear, after the wedding, your services won't be needed anymore. I'll take care of my wife." Before I could respond, his charm switched back on as my mother returned. He took the ice with a wink and rejoined the party, leaving me frozen in place. Later, I tried to process what had happened. Had Heather really characterized my help as a control freak intervention? And more importantly, did Jake really know the full story, or was he bluffing? I decided to confront Heather, directly texting her to meet for coffee the next day. Her response was quick: "Super busy with wedding stuff." "Can it wait?" "It could not wait," I insisted. Reluctantly, she agreed to a quick meeting. The coffee shop was crowded, which suited me fine. Heather was less likely to make a scene in public. I cut straight to the point. "Jake mentioned our financial arrangement last night. What exactly have you told him?" Heather's expression cycled through surprise, embarrassment, and finally defiance. "I had to tell him something," she said, stirring her latte aggressively. "He noticed the monthly budget transfers. I just said you were helping me pay off some old debts because you're good with money. It's not a big deal." "Did you tell him the full amount I pressed? Did you explain that I've contributed over $30,000 of my own money?" Heather's cheeks flushed. "I didn't get into specifics. Look, Jake comes from serious money. He wouldn't understand struggling with credit card debt. I didn't want to start our marriage with him thinking I'm financially irresponsible." The irony of her statement was almost painful. "So instead, you've let him believe I'm what, some controlling sister who's interfering in your finances for no reason." "You're overreacting," Heather insisted, checking her watch. "Jake respects you. He's just protective of me, that's all." She gathered her designer purse, a recent gift from Jake, no doubt. "I have a cake tasting in 20 minutes. Can we talk about this after the wedding? Everything's just really hectic right now." As she hurried away, leaving her half-finished coffee, I realized with crushing clarity that nothing had changed. Despite our moments of genuine connection, despite my significant financial sacrifice, I was still the inconvenient sister, the one whose feelings and contributions could be dismissed whenever they became uncomfortable. The revelation left me with a decision to make. I could confront Heather more forcefully, possibly causing a family rift right before her wedding. I could approach Jake directly, clarifying the situation from my perspective. Or I could remain silent, continuing to pay off her debt as promised while accepting that my sister might never acknowledge or appreciate the sacrifice. For the moment, I chose silence. The upcoming Thanksgiving dinner would bring the entire family together, including Jake's parents. It wasn't the right time for confrontation. I would get through the holiday, reassess, and decide my next steps carefully. I had no idea that Thanksgiving would force my hand in ways I could never have anticipated. Thanksgiving has always been a production in the Mitchell family. My mother spends weeks planning the menu, polishing the heirloom silver, and arranging the dining room to showcase our family's prosperity and togetherness. This year, the stakes were even higher, with Jake's parents, the distinguished Dr. and Mrs. Westbrook, joining us for the first time. My mother had been practically vibrating with anxiety for days, determined to impress these people who represented everything she had always aspired to. I arrived early to help with preparations, finding my mother fussing over flower arrangements while my father pretended to watch football occasionally, nodding at her nervous monologues about wine pairings. "The Westbrooks are very particular about their Cabernets," she informed me for the third time as I chopped vegetables. "Eleanor serves on the board of the Boston Symphony Orchestra, you know." When Heather and Jake arrived, they made a calculated entrance 40 minutes late, but bearing expensive wine and gourmet chocolates that instantly erased any irritation. Heather looked stunning in a designer dress. I'd never seen her engagement ring catching the light with every animated gesture. Jake played his role perfectly, complimenting my mother's decor and engaging my father in discussions about golf courses they both frequented. The Westbrooks arrived next, exuding the casual confidence of people accustomed to being the most important presence in any room. Dr. Westbrook, a distinguished cardiac surgeon, immediately dominated conversation with my father, while Eleanor Westbrook scrutinized our home with the polite smile of someone making mental notes for later discussion. Dinner began smoothly enough. The food was excellent. My mother had outdone herself with a heritage turkey and all the traditional fixings. Wine flowed freely as conversation moved through safe topics: Boston's weather, the upcoming symphony season, and carefully sanitized anecdotes from Heather and Jake's courtship. I remained quiet, offering brief responses when directly addressed, but otherwise focusing on my meal. The first hint of tension appeared during discussions about the wedding. Eleanor Westbrook, sipping her third glass of wine, mentioned the Fairmont Copley Plaza as the venue for her niece's recent wedding. Such a charming space, though, perhaps a bit conventional for some tastes. My mother stiffened beside me. Heather and Jake had selected that exact venue after weeks of searching. "Well, Heather and Jake have chosen the Fairmont," my mother replied with forced lightness. "We think it's perfectly elegant." Eleanor's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, how lovely. It's certainly reliable." The slight emphasis on reliable hung in the air like a subtle insult. As dessert was served, the conversation shifted to careers. Dr. Westbrook expounded at length about Jake's promising future at his investment firm. He's being groomed for partnership, of course. The Crawford account alone has brought in millions. Jake accepted this praise with practiced modesty, while Heather beamed beside him. "And what do you do?" Avery Eleanor asked, turning to me with the polite interest of someone filling a conversational gap. Before I could answer, my mother jumped in. "Avery works in research at a pharmaceutical company." Her tone carried the slight apologetic quality I'd grown accustomed to, the implicit suggestion that my career was respectable but unremarkable. "I'm actually leading the development team for a new treatment for rheumatoid arthritis," I clarified. "We've just moved into the final phase of clinical trials." "How fascinating," Eleanor murmured, already turning back toward Heather. "And Heather, Jake mentioned you're considering leaving your job after the wedding." This was news to me. I glanced at my sister, whose cheeks had colored slightly. "We're discussing options," she said vaguely. "Jake thinks I could do wonderful things in event planning, or perhaps interior design." "Heather has always been so creative," my mother added enthusiastically. "She could excel at anything artistic." The conversation continued along these lines, with Jake and Heather presenting their future as a series of enviable choices unburdened by practical considerations like income or experience. Meanwhile, I helped clear plates, refresh drinks, and maintained my peripheral position in the family tableau. As coffee was served in the living room, Jake's father raised his glass, a toast to the happy couple and their bright future. "May your lives together be as perfect as this lovely gathering." Glasses clinked. Congratulations flowed. And something inside me, some dam of restraint built over years of practiced silence, began to crack. The breaking point came unexpectedly. As we sat digesting our desserts, my mother mentioned a charity gala happening in December. "We should all attend," she suggested. "It's for children's cancer research, such an important cause." "Absolutely," Heather agreed. Jake and I were already planning to take a table. "The minimum donation is $5,000, but it's so worth it." $5,000. The exact amount I had transferred to her account last week to cover the minimum payment on her 2 remaining credit cards. Money that represented months of my careful budgeting and overtime work. Money that was apparently now funding her social climbing with the Westbrooks. Speaking of donations, my father said, turning to me with unexpected attention, "Avery, didn't you mention some financial difficulties recently? Your mother and I wondered if you might need a small loan for that condo you were considering." This was the first I'd heard of any such offer. In fact, I'd specifically avoided mentioning my housing search to my parents, knowing they would find ways to criticize my choices. But before I could respond, Heather let out a sharp laugh. "Oh, Dad, Avery's always so worried about money. It's like her hobby." She turned to Eleanor with a conspiratorial smile. "My sister is super frugal. She probably has $1 million hidden under her mattress." "There's nothing wrong with financial responsibility," Dr. Westbrook noted approvingly. "More young people should exercise such restraint." "It goes beyond responsibility," Heather continued, warming to her topic as the wine loosened her tongue. "Avery's obsessed. She's constantly checking in about my spending, offering unsolicited financial advice." She rolled her eyes dramatically. "Like last month, she practically had a meltdown when I bought my wedding shoes." Jake placed a warning hand on her arm, perhaps sensing she was venturing into dangerous territory. But Heather was too far gone. "I mean, I appreciate that she cares, but seriously, stop asking for money all the time. Some of us want to actually enjoy life instead of counting pennies until we're 80. The room went silent. All eyes turned to me, watching for my reaction. In that moment, 3 years of sacrifice, discretion, and sisterly loyalty collided with the stunning injustice of Heather's words. My careful plans for a private resolution evaporated. "I've never asked you for money, Heather," I said, my voice quiet but perfectly clear in the silent room. "In fact, it's been quite the opposite." "What are you talking about?" my mother interjected, her social smile frozen in place. "Avery, this isn't the time. Actually, I think it's exactly the time." I set down my coffee cup carefully. "For the past 3 years, I've been helping Heather pay off her credit card debt. $52,800 in debt, to be precise. I've contributed over $30,000 of my own money, delayed buying my own home, and put my life on hold to help her avoid bankruptcy." The silence that followed was absolute. Heather's face drained of color. Jake's expression hardened into something dangerous. My parents looked completely bewildered. "That's not— You're making this sound worse than Heather," stammered. "I have the spreadsheets, Heather. Every payment, every card, every interest rate. Would you like me to show everyone I reached for my phone? I can pull up the documents right now." "There must be some misunderstanding," my mother said weakly. "Heather would have told us if she was in financial trouble." "Would she?" I asked suddenly, tired of the pretense. When has anyone in this family wanted to hear anything that contradicted the perfect image of Heather's charmed life? When have any of you actually asked about my life, my achievements, or my sacrifices? Dr. Westbrook cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Perhaps we should give the family some privacy to discuss this matter." "No need," I said, standing up. I was just leaving. I turned to Heather, whose eyes were now filling with tears, whether from shame or anger, I couldn't tell. "The final payments are scheduled for next month. After that, you're on your own. Congratulations on your engagement." As I gathered my coat and purse, my father finally spoke. "Avery, wait. We didn't know. That's the point, Dad. You never asked. None of you did." I looked around the stunned faces one last time. "Thank you for dinner. Happy Thanksgiving." Walking to my car in the cold November air, I felt a strange mixture of regret and liberation. The family secrets had been exposed. The carefully maintained illusions had shattered. Whatever happened next, there would be no going back to the comfortable patterns of denial and selective attention that had defined our family for decades. As I drove away from my childhood home, my phone began buzzing with messages first from my mother, then my father, then Jake. Heather's name was conspicuously absent from the notifications. I turned the phone off and kept driving, unsure where I was headed, but certain that something fundamental had changed. The confrontation that had seemed so catastrophic in my imagination had finally happened. I had spoken my truth, and remarkably, the world hadn't ended. In fact, as the initial adrenaline subsided, I realized I felt lighter than I had in years. The burden of secrecy had been even heavier than the financial one. I finally pulled into a parking lot and allowed myself a moment to breathe. What would happen tomorrow? Would Heather call to apologize or to yell? Would my parents finally see the dynamic they had fostered? Would Jake's family withdraw their support for the wedding? In that moment, I made a decision that surprised even me. Whatever happened next, I would not be the one to reach out first. For once, I would let the other members of my family do the emotional work. I would wait and listen and decide what I wanted our relationship to be moving forward, not what was expected of me. I turned my car toward home, toward my quiet apartment, where no one questioned my worth or overlooked my achievements. For the first time in my adult life, I felt completely aligned with my own truth. The road ahead was uncertain, but I would face it on my own terms. You know, life has a way of revealing people's true characters at the most unexpected moments. This Thanksgiving showdown was just the beginning of a journey that would transform our entire family. As someone watching this video, I'm curious. Have you ever had to confront a difficult truth in your own family? Did you find the courage to speak up, or are you still waiting for the right moment? Let me know in the comments below. And if you're enjoying this story so far, please hit that like button. The aftermath of my confrontation. That's where things get really interesting. The days following Thanksgiving unfolded in a blur of missed calls, text messages, and family chaos. My phone became a battlefield of notifications that I observed from a distance, choosing when and how to engage. My mother called 17 times in the first 24 hours, her voicemails evolving from shocked, "I can't believe you would embarrass your sister like that," to concerned, "Are you sure about these numbers, honey?" to conciliatory, "We should sit down as a family and discuss this calmly." My father, never comfortable with emotional confrontation, sent a single text, "Let me know when you're ready to talk. Love you." It was perhaps the most direct expression of affection he'd offered in years, and its simplicity moved me more than my mother's elaborate voicemails. Jake called once, leaving a terse message requesting that I contact him regarding financial discrepancies that need immediate clarification. His tone suggested he was preparing for a business negotiation rather than a family reconciliation. I deleted his message without responding. Most tellingly, Heather remained silent for 3 full days. No calls, no texts, no social media activity, an unprecedented digital disappearance for someone who typically documented her daily coffee selection. When she finally reached out, it was with a simple message that betrayed none of the expected emotion. "Can we meet tomorrow alone?" I suggested a small cafe in a neighborhood far from her usual haunts, somewhere we wouldn't encounter mutual acquaintances. When I arrived, I spotted her immediately hunched over a mug of tea, wearing minimal makeup and casual clothes I hadn't seen her in for years. She looked younger and surprisingly vulnerable. "I wasn't sure you'd come," she said as I sat down across from her. "I said I would," I replied, ordering a coffee from the hovering waitress. When we were alone again, I waited, determined that Heather would speak first for once. After a long silence, she looked up with red-rimmed eyes. "You've really been paying off my credit cards all this time?" "Yes." I kept my response simple, resisting the urge to pull out my phone and display the meticulous spreadsheets tracking every payment. "Why didn't you tell everyone from the beginning? Why keep it secret?" The question caught me off guard. Of all the things she might have said, this seemed to miss the point entirely. Because you asked me to. You specifically said you didn't want Mom and Dad to know you were in financial trouble. Heather stared into her tea. But you could have held it over me. Used it to make yourself look better. That wasn't the point of helping you. Then what was the point? Her question wasn't accusatory, but genuinely confused, as though the concept of assistance without an agenda was foreign to her. You're my sister, Heather. You were in trouble. I had the means to help. I shrugged. It seemed that simple at the time. A tear slipped down her cheek. Nothing about our relationship has ever been simple. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of decades of complicated family dynamics between us. Finally, Heather spoke again, her voice barely audible. Jake called off the engagement. This news shouldn't have shocked me, given Jake's obvious concern with status and appearances, but somehow it did. I'm sorry, I said, and meant it. Are you, Heather? Looked up sharply. You never liked him. I didn't know him well enough to like or dislike him, I pointed out. But I know what it's like to have plans fall apart. And I never wanted to see you hurt. Heather's laugh was hollow. Well, I'm plenty hurt now. His parents made it clear they couldn't welcome someone with financial improprieties into their family. Jake didn't even fight for me. 3 hours after we left Thanksgiving dinner, it was over. She twisted the now absent engagement ring finger. He wanted the ring back immediately. Said it was a family heirloom, though I'm pretty sure he bought it at Tiffany's in September. My heart ached for her despite everything. What will you do now? Move out of his condo, obviously. Find somewhere I can afford. She hesitated. Mom and Dad offered to let me move back home temporarily, but I couldn't face that conversation every day. The disappointment in their eyes. They'll get over it, I said. They always do where you're concerned. That's not fair, Heather protested, then stopped herself. Or maybe it is. I don't know anymore. Everything I thought I knew about our family feels wrong now. She fidgeted with her napkin. After you left, Dad got really quiet. Then he started asking Mom questions about why they never came to your research presentations. Why they didn't have any photos from your college graduation in the living room. It was like he was seeing our family dynamic clearly for the first time. This information surprised me. My father had always seemed content to follow my mother's lead in family matters. What did Mom say? She got defensive at first. Then she started crying. Heather shook her head. I've never seen them fight like that. They sent the Westbrooks home and argued until midnight. I heard them through the guest room wall. I absorbed this, trying to imagine my conflict-avoidant parents in a genuine confrontation. And how are they now? Weird. Quiet. Dad's been sleeping in his study. Heather sighed. This isn't how I wanted things to change. Did you want things to change at all? I asked quietly. Her eyes met mine. I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe I was comfortable being the favorite. Her honesty was startling. But I'm not comfortable knowing it hurt you. We talked for hours that afternoon, peeling back layers of resentment and misunderstanding. Heather revealed how our parents' excessive praise had created impossible standards she felt compelled to maintain at any cost. I admitted that my aloofness had sometimes been a defensive shield rather than genuine indifference. Neither of us had created the dynamic that defined our childhood, but we had both perpetuated it in our own ways. As evening approached, Heather reached across the table and took my hand, a gesture so unexpected I nearly pulled away. I don't deserve your forgiveness, she said, but I'm asking for it anyway. And for your help in figuring out what comes next, I'm not sure I'm the right financial advisor for you anymore, I said carefully. I'm not talking about money. I'm talking about being sisters, real sisters, not these roles we've been playing our whole lives. Her grip tightened. I want to try again, if you'll let me. Walking back to our cars, a tentative plan began to form. Heather would find her own apartment and a stable job. I would help her create a realistic budget that she would maintain independently. We would meet regularly, not as financial supervisor and delinquent debtor, but simply as sisters getting to know each other as adults. Most importantly, we would communicate honestly, without the protective lies and omissions that had characterized our relationship for so long. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. Decades of established patterns wouldn't change overnight. But as we said goodbye that evening, I felt something I hadn't experienced in my family relationships before: hope. 3 months passed after the Thanksgiving revelation, bringing changes I never could have anticipated. Winter settled over Boston, blanketing the city in snow that muffled sounds and slowed the usual frantic pace. In this quieter landscape, our family began a careful reconstruction. Heather found a modest one-bedroom apartment in Jamaica Plain and a job as an administrative assistant at a local nonprofit. The position paid significantly less than her previous roles in glamorous but unstable industries, but it offered something she'd never prioritized before: stability. It's weird not having to pretend all the time, she confided during one of our weekly sister dinners. Do you know how exhausting it is to maintain an image of perfect success every minute of every day? I did know in a way. I'd maintained my own image as the self-sufficient, emotionally detached sister who needed nothing from anyone. Both masks had been heavy in their own ways. My parents underwent the most surprising transformation. 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, they appeared at my apartment unannounced, bearing takeout from my favorite Thai restaurant and visible nervousness. "We'd like to talk," my father said, uncharacteristically taking the lead. "If you're willing to hear us out." Over pad thai and spring rolls, my mother produced a small photo album I'd never seen before. Inside were dozens of photographs documenting achievements my parents had seemingly overlooked: science fair ribbons, writing contest certificates, my undergraduate research presentation. "We kept these," she said softly. "We noticed everything, Avery. We just didn't know how to show it properly." "Your mother and I have been doing some difficult reflection," my father continued. "We recognized patterns in our parenting that weren't fair to either of you. Heather became defined by external validation, while you learned to expect none. We failed you both in different ways." Their acknowledgement was both healing and disorienting. I'd built so much of my identity around being the overlooked daughter that their recognition required me to reconsider who I was without that narrative. "We'd like to try again," my mother said, echoing Heather's words from weeks earlier. "Not to erase the past, but to build something better moving forward." That conversation marked the beginning of a careful reconnection. My parents started asking genuine questions about my work, listening attentively to explanations of research protocols and clinical trials that would have glazed their eyes over in the past. When my team received a significant grant in February, they hosted a small celebration dinner and made a donation to the Arthritis Foundation in my name. More significantly, they began treating Heather differently as well. Rather than effusive praise for superficial achievements, they offered specific encouragement for her genuine efforts at building a sustainable life. When she expressed interest in eventually pursuing a degree in social work, my father researched part-time programs that might accommodate her work schedule. "It's like they're actually seeing us for the first time," Heather remarked during a Sunday brunch at our parents' home. "Not just projecting what they want to see." The final payment on Heather's last credit card cleared in January, exactly 3 years and 2 months after I'd first discovered her financial crisis. I'd kept my promise, completing the rescue mission despite the temporary rupture in our relationship. Heather insisted on marking the occasion, presenting me with a small wooden box during one of our sister dinners. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet with a simple infinity symbol. "It's not expensive," she said quickly. "I'm actually sticking to my budget these days. But I wanted you to have something to remember that your kindness wasn't wasted." I wore the bracelet every day after that, a tangible reminder of both painful history and new beginnings. Jake resurfaced in March with an unexpected LinkedIn request and a message suggesting professional networking opportunities. I declined without response. Through mutual acquaintances, I learned he'd quickly become engaged to another woman from a prominent Boston family, this one with a father on the hospital board where Dr. Westbrook practiced. Some patterns, it seemed, were too deeply ingrained to break. Heather showed no interest in dating, focusing instead on what she called her financial sobriety and emotional growth. "I need to figure out who I am when I'm not trying to impress someone else," she explained. "That's going to take some time." The most profound change, however, happened quietly within me. For years, I'd defined myself in opposition to Heather, the responsible one, the serious one, the one who didn't need attention or validation. This reverse narcissism had limited me in ways I was only beginning to recognize. Without the constant comparison to my sister, who was, I began exploring aspects of myself that had nothing to do with family dynamics. I joined a rock climbing gym, discovering unexpected joy in physical challenges that had nothing to do with academic achievement. I accepted invitations to social gatherings I would have previously declined, slowly building a circle of friends who knew nothing about my family history. I even went on a few dates with a kind, thoughtful botanist who appreciated both my scientific mind and my emerging sense of adventure. As spring approached, bringing the first crocuses to Boston Common, I received an unexpected email from the pharmaceutical company's executive team. My research project had progressed exceptionally well, and they wanted me to present our findings at an international conference in Tokyo. The irony wasn't lost on me. Japan had been my dream destination, the trip I'd postponed to help Heather. Now, the opportunity had returned in an even more meaningful form. When I shared the news with my family during Sunday dinner, their genuine excitement reinforced how much had changed. My mother immediately began researching Tokyo's cultural highlights, while my father proudly mentioned the conference to his colleagues. Heather insisted on helping me shop for professional attire appropriate for the presentation. "You deserve this recognition," she said as we browsed department store racks. "You always have." The night before my departure for Tokyo, our family gathered for a celebratory dinner. As we raised our glasses in a toast, I looked around at these familiar faces that somehow seemed new, my father more emotionally present than ever before. My mother learning to distribute her attention more equitably. Heather gradually becoming the authentic person behind the perfect facade. To Avery, my father said, whose brilliance and compassion have always been extraordinary. And to new beginnings, Heather added softly, for all of us. As our glasses clinked, I realized that the debt that had been fully repaid wasn't just financial. Something more valuable had been restored, the possibility of a family based on truth, rather than carefully maintained illusions. The journey had been painful, the confrontation at Thanksgiving, a necessary rupture, but the healing that followed had created something stronger and more authentic than what came before. In helping Heather escape her financial crisis, I had inadvertently freed us all from the emotional debts we'd accumulated over decades of misunderstanding. Some balances, it seemed, could only be settled by first being brought into the light. 1 year after the Thanksgiving that changed everything, we gathered again around my parents' dining table. The setting was familiar, my mother's carefully polished silver, the traditional turkey centerpiece, family photos arranged on the sideboard, but almost everything else had transformed. The photographs now represented a more balanced family narrative, including recent additions: Heather receiving her acceptance to a social work program, my parents and me at the Tokyo conference, and all 4 of us laughing on a weekend hiking trip we'd taken in September. These images told a new story, not of a golden child and her shadow, but of four individuals learning to appreciate each other's unique strengths and journeys. Heather arrived carrying a homemade pie rather than store-bought luxury items, her confidence now stemming from genuine accomplishment rather than appearance. My parents welcomed us with affection that felt authentic rather than performative, and I found myself fully present, no longer mentally cataloging slights or maintaining emotional distance. As we settled around the table, my father proposed a new Thanksgiving tradition. Each person would share something they were genuinely thankful for from the past year. "I'll start," Heather said, her voice steady. "I'm thankful for second chances, for the opportunity to rebuild what was broken, and for a sister who saw my value even when I couldn't see it myself." My mother wiped away a tear. "I'm thankful for the courage to change, even when it's painful. For the gift of really seeing my daughters as they are, not as I imagined them." My father cleared his throat. "I'm thankful for honest conversations, for the privilege of knowing my family, truly knowing them, perhaps for the first time." When my turn came, I looked around at these familiar strangers who had become at last my authentic family. I'm thankful for the breakdown that led to a breakthrough, for the crisis that forced us to confront our truth, and for the knowledge that sometimes the most valuable debts we repay are the ones that can't be measured in dollars. As we joined hands around the table, I realized that our family story had come full circle. What began as a secret financial rescue had culminated in a mutual emotional salvation. The journey had been painful, messy, and utterly necessary. In the end, the greatest debt had been repaid, not with money, but with truth, the priceless currency of genuine connection. What about you? Have you ever experienced a family crisis that ultimately led to healing? Or discovered that sometimes the most difficult confrontations lead to the most meaningful growth? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button, subscribe to my channel for more authentic family stories, and share this video with someone who might need to hear that family relationships can change for the better. Thank you for being part of this journey with me, and remember, sometimes the most powerful form of family vengeance is simply living your truth.